because Jesus Christ is the big question in the religious world. Who was He? And I hope to, probably I'm going to have to teach maybe two more weeks on this one. Then we're going to go and study the devil. And it's very important that we study him. And then we're going to study about hell after that. And many of the other doctrines, of the basic doctrines of the Bible. I hope when I get you through this book, that you could go teach a Sunday school class, that you could do whatever you need to do in your Christian life, helps you witness. If somebody asks you a question, use this as a reference guide. So many people have. In the Solomon Islands, a friend of mine is a missionary to the Solomon Islands. And he took this over there, and they had like a 2-week course where they taught all the pastors things like here. And then they'd leave them to go out into all the different areas and teach their...
Did you turn it on?
Yes.
Okay.
And then they would leave these booklets with the pastors so they could teach and feed their people. And this is very basic, and yet it's in depth. And a lot of it you can study on your own at home, and then come back, and we will. If you've got any questions or something, we can do this. Now, our divine attributes, number 4, our divine attributes given to Jesus Christ. Divine attributes. Absolutely. Your cult world, like your Mormons and your Jehovah's Witnesses, Jesus was only an angel or a good person. Your Islam or the Muslim faith, Jesus Christ was just a prophet of God. Now, Jesus Christ is more than that because He is God. And He is not a God. He is the God of heaven. He is the Creator. All right? Now, the Gospel of John and the book of Revelation, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, there are 5 books that the writer, the Apostle John, wrote. And every one of those books, how does it portray Jesus Christ? As the eternal God of heaven. All right? The Gospel according to John, many of the cults, Islam, does not like the Gospel of John at all. You know, they will accept some of the New Testament. They accept it with their interpretation of it, except for the Gospel of John, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and the book of Revelation. They don't want to have anything to do with it. You know why? Because it so plainly teaches that Jesus is Jehovah God. All right? Or all of them, as they look at it. Okay? Now, a lot of religions, like, for instance, the Jehovah's Witnesses, which is an absolute misnomer. They are not Jehovah's Witnesses. They are anti-Jehovah's Witnesses because Jehovah is Jesus Christ, and they say that He was not God. All right? That He is not the Creator. But the Bible teaches that. Now, you have to really twist the Scriptures up to get through John, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and the book of Revelation, and not see Jesus as the Creator, Jehovah God. No. You've got to tear the Bible up to do that. But they do. People do that. Now, in number 4,
see, I better give you mine.
Brother, here you a book. We're on page number 9. And under number 4, our divine attributes given to Jesus Christ. All right? Our divine attributes given to Jesus Christ. And our answer was, yes, absolutely. All right. Luke 7:14 and 15 and Luke 8 and 54. Somebody turn there, and as you're going to here, look ahead just a little bit and look up these scriptures, some of you, and someone that has it, I'll call upon you. Luke 7:14. Brother Kim.
14 and 15 or 14?
14 and 15.
Okay. Then he came and touched the open coffin, and those who carried him stood still. And he said, Young man, I say to you, rise. So he who was dead sat up and began to speak, and he presented him to his mother.
Oh boy. Now, in the Old Testament, was anyone ever raised from the dead? Yeah. All right, anyone was ever raised from the dead?
Little girl in Revelation.
Yep. There were some people raised from the dead, but every time it was the power of God working.
Yeah.
Now, Jesus is, why is He doing the miracles? Why is Jesus doing the miracles? Because God had compassion on these dead people, sick people? What is the main purpose of the miracles? His messianic credentials that He is Jehovah God in the flesh. Okay? Now this, and every time somebody was raised from the dead, every time somebody was healed from blindness or leprosy, they had to go to the priest and say, I was dead and now I'm not dead anymore. And they had to write down and give them a certificate. That they're alive, that they're healed from leprosy. They couldn't go back in the community until they were considered clean. Read the laws of Moses. And so every time that Jesus healed anybody, guess what? It was an indictment against national Israel. Because the Messiah had come. All right, so that's what's taking place here now. This is the God of heaven. The Messiah was going to do all of these things. The dead had been raised in the Old Testament, but every time somebody was raised from the dead, it was recorded. And guess what? Israel accepted that as absolute, inspired truth from these writers in the Old Testament. Okay? So again.
This is what I just noticed when you're talking about the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, when this kind of thing happened, it was in the name of God or something else. But right here it specifically says, Jesus said, I say to you.
I say to you. Now
you.
who did it?
God.
God. Who's I? That's first person singular.
Yeah.
I said, raised. Jesus told one of the Mary and Martha and Lazarus. Remember when Lazarus was dead? What did Jesus reveal to her? He said He's going to raise. Oh, I know I'm going to raise Him from the dead. Oh, I know He'll be raised in the last day. And Jesus told her very plainly, I am the resurrection. I am the resurrection. Here's the God of the resurrection, of the standing again. Anastasia. The word Anastasia in Russian, Anastasia, the Princess Anastasia, that name means the resurrection. That's what it means. Anastasia. It comes from Anastasia, to stand again, the resurrection. All right. So He told Lazarus' sister that I am the resurrection. Now here is the resurrection, resurrecting a dead person. Okay, let's go on a little bit further. Luke 8 and verse 54, and someone look up John 11 too. John 8 and verse 54. Who's got that? Yes, Alma.
But He took her by the hand and said, My child, get up.
Talitha Kumei. That's what He said to her. Arise, maid. Maid, arise. Stand up. He spoke to her, and by the way, he was speaking in Arabic at that time. When he said that, rise, maid, arise. Rise, stand up. What was wrong with her? Why would she laying down? Dead. We have the God of the resurrection again. All right, John 11, 43 and verse 44. Have you got that, brother? You got that one?
Now when He had said these things, He cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came out bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, Loose him and let him go.
He had been dead for several days, hadn't he? You know that people used to go into comas. How many of you ever heard of somebody being buried and their beard growing after they were dead? Well, they weren't dead. Before they embalmed people, they buried a lot of alive people. And they would hang around, and they would have these wakes in people's homes for 3 or 4 days before they'd ever bury somebody, just in case they were in a coma. And they put a mirror up to their nose and everything, and they would try to see if the person was alive. Well, Lazarus was dead. He had met all the requirements of the dead man. They had buried him now, and he was in the coffin, and the time had passed. We know that he's dead. And what did they say? Well, he is starting to stink. All right. He is rotting. He is decaying. And roll back the song. Well, he stinks. I mean, that's rough. Wow, we don't want to smell that guy. And what did he say? Lazarus, come forth. Brother Norm.
Yeah, well, you know, these miracles that God performed was just an example of what He's going to do in the future. And when He says arise, made arise, it's kind of challenging that one of these days people on earth are going to rise and going to bring us all back.
That's why, many commentators said when Jesus said, Lazarus, come forth, if He had said, come forth, then every grave would have busted open.
Yep.
Yeah.
He spoke his name.
But He spoke His name and says, Lazarus, come forth. And He did. The resurrection. This is the absolutely messianic credentials of God in flesh, John 1:14. All right? God became flesh. John, see, that was John 11:43 and 44, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hebrews 1 and 3. Who's got that? Brother John.
And He is the radiance of His glory and the exact representation of His nature, and upholds all things by the word of His power. When He had made purification of sins, He sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high.
All right. There's quite a bit in this. The writer of the book of Hebrews is tremendously describing the God of glory. Now, I don't know who wrote the book of Hebrews. I'll be honest with you. People ask me that all the time. I don't think anybody should even comment on any book who wrote it unless they can read it in the original language, because it tells so much from the original language. You learn about the writer. I'm teaching 1 Peter right now on Wednesday night. And Peter was not an ignorant fisherman. You learn that from his writings. He studied, and you can see where these words are coming from. He read a lot. He was an educated man, even though they accused him not of being. After you read his writings, and you know he wasn't some dumb fisherman. Now, whoever wrote the book of Hebrews didn't quote the Old Testament in Hebrew at all. He quoted in the Septuagint. Every quotation that he makes is from the Septuagint. It's not. Septuagint is a Greek translation of the Old Testament. He does not quote Hebrew. Many people say whoever wrote the book of Hebrews didn't know Hebrew. He didn't quote any Hebrew.
It was quoted Septuagint.
Huh?
It was quoted from
The Septuagint. The Septuagint was a translation of the Old Testament Hebrew Scriptures done about 300 B.C. All right? Around 300 B.C., some 280 to 300 B.C. The writer of the book of Hebrews does not quote the Hebrew Bible. He quotes the Septuagint, or the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible.
But the writer is unknown. They don't know who wrote
We don't know who the writer of the book of Hebrews is, but it is inspired of God. We know that. This is a royal book. I'm telling you, this is a royal book. Many people have said Paul wrote it. And it might have been one of Paul's students. And of course, Apollos was one of Paul's students and a great Greek writer. Okay, that's possible. I'm not saying he did it. It's possible. Because he uses Paul's writing style. How many of you ever heard Travis Hubbard preach? Dr. Travis Hubbard preach. He was my Greek brother at Living had. Brother, do I preach like you?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. He was my teacher. I preach a lot like him. And every pastor and everything I have got a little bit of them in me. And you do that knowingly or unknowingly. You imitate them in their way of delivery and things, and their way of study. I think the book of Hebrews, it could have been a student of Paul's because it's imitating some of the things Paul did, but not the intricate things that Paul did.
You know, he could have been speaking to the Hebrew people, but if the Hebrew people at that time spoke in the Greek, they would use the Greek language to speak to the Hebrew people.
But Paul quoted the Hebrew Bible. And he spoke Hebrew. He knew Hebrew well. That's the only. This is just something to think about, okay, Peter? Just think about this. That's all. Think about it. It'll give you something to think about. And as Ben Bogart used to say, young man, think. It's a good trick if you can do it. Think. Learn to think. All right, he is the radiance of his glory, of the glory of God, because he is God. He is the exact physical representation of the invisible God that we see in the Bible. The Muslim people will not accept Christ as God. They only worship Allah, the great Creator. Well, here He is. Their people say that there is no physical God like this, but here we have the physical God. This is Him. The Hebrew people today will not accept a physical person as the Elohim God of the Bible, or the Jehovah God of the Bible. But even the name Jehovah means what? He who shall become. Now, He is that one. He is the one, and the Bible makes it so plainly. He was going to come into the world. Why did Jesus come into the world? Why did Jehovah have to become flesh?
He had to be a member.
He had to be a member of this society and of this cosmos. He had to partake of it. He had to be related to it so He could redeem it back. Or else all of us would be trying to live perfect lives, which is impossible. And by the way, the last part of that saying, it says He upholds all things by the power of His Word. How did God create the heavens and the Word? I mean, the heavens and the earth. Boy, I gave it away. The heavens and the earth. He spoke it into existence by His Word. How does Jesus hold the worlds together? By His Word. All right. The word "word" there means authority, by the way. It means authority. Matthew 8:23 through 27. Who has got that group?
When He got into the boat, His disciples followed Him, and behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being covered with the waves. But Jesus Himself was asleep. And they came to Him and woke Him, saying, Save us, Lord, we are perishing. He said to them, Why are you afraid, you men of little faith? Then He got up and rebuked the waves and the sea, and it became perfectly calm. The men were amazed and said, What kind of a man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey Him?
What kind of a man?
Exactly.
Because He wasn't a man. How many of you ever been out in the ocean or on a lake where there's a big storm? How many of you ever got in a storm out on water?
Yeah.
I took my wife out this last summer. We bought an old beat-up boat. You know, 4 people have 4 boats. We bought an old beat-up 20-foot ocean-going boat. Isn't it? What kind of boat is that, wife? Tiara. It's a Tiara. Tiara Yacht Company built it. And one of the retired airmen had it. He was too old to use it, and he was just thrashed. So I've rebuilt it. And we took it out into the ocean. My wife had never been in the ocean. And I used to go out there in a 14-foot boat and fish all up and down, almost 20 miles out in the ocean with that thing. And it was crazy now, I wouldn't do it again. But I'd go out there in that boat and fish all over, and we'd catch a lot of fish. And I would take my wife out into the ocean, and it was just calm and beautiful and clear out there, and she'd say, no. I want to be right there in the harbor, buoy. Right there. And I'd go out there and I'd edge her out just a little bit more. I said, well, it's beautiful riding out there. Let's go out there just a little bit further where the fish are, you know. And we'd get out there a little bit, and then one day when we went out there, I finally got her out there fishing. If you could get her fishing, she'd forget about everything else. I got her out there and I threw out a line, and nothing could hit this line because there wasn't any bait on it, really. And it wasn't heavy enough to go down in the water, but I was trolling right into a storm. And that boat just sheds water like nothing. I mean, it's just no problem. We got out there, and I mean, it was blowing. All the boats were coming in and everything. Water was just flying and everything. My boat was really dry inside. Everybody else is soaked. My boat sheds the water like it's supposed to with a wet deck and everything. Anyway, she's back there fishing. She don't even know where to start. Not going to catch anything because she's not deep enough. But I at least got her out there in the ocean. Well, step at a time, step at a time, step at a time. It's scary out there. You know, this last summer, Mr. Tibbs' ribs over there, a whale jumped on his boat and landed on his boat and killed him. We were out there and we saw those whales that were jumping that killed him. They were jumping completely out of the water. Some of the most beautiful things in the world are out there in the ocean. It's unbelievable beauty. But it's dangerous. You have to know what you're doing. And it can scare you. Now, we have a big lake. The Sea of Galilee is really not a sea. It's a great big lake. Okay? And how many of you have ever been up here to Lake Isabella? That is a dangerous lake. There are a lot of people got killed up here in that lake. In storms and stuff. Well, Lake Sea of Galilee is like that. And when people go out there, you've got to get off that lake fast. I mean, it'll smash your boat into the rocks and stuff when the winds come up. And, I mean, your boat's gone, and if you can get out of there alive, you're lucky. Well, here we are with fishermen in primitive little boats going across the Sea of Galilee. And there's a tremendous storm that's sinking the boat. And they're bailing as fast as they can bail. They didn't have these automatic. My boat's got a bilge pump. You just turn it on, it pumps the water out of it. See? But they were bailing as fast as they could bail, and Jesus is asleep. There's God of the universe. You know why that happened? You know why this happened? Why is this scene recorded in the Bible?
To teach those guys.
Huh?
To
teach them to trust the God of heaven. And to teach that who is the author of all storms in this world and all sickness? And even the devil is. It just shows us that God can intercede and still nature is sin. He has power to do it. This is the God of the universe here that steals the storm. All right? He steals the storm. Now, don't go out in the Pacific Ocean or up here at Lake Isabella and expect to walk on the water. or cry unto Jesus to come and help you and steal the storm when you're right out in the middle of it. You shouldn't be going out there. You better watch the weather report today. But right here, they had the Creator in that boat with them. And He was not going to perish. He had to go to the cross of Calvary. He wasn't going to perish out there in the Sea of Galilee. And if they just studied the Bible well enough, they'd have known that.
You know, Jim, I put down here, He controls nature, the weather, but also the withering of the fig tree. I mean, He controls the plant life.
Yeah, that fig tree represented Israel, and that was a parable of judgment. Parable of judgment. But He is over all plant life and all things. Farmers know that, especially in dryland farming where they don't irrigate, they know that they need to pray for God to provide for them. Now, number B, omniscient. Omniscient. That omni, that's a word that means all, doesn't it? Omniscient, that means to know. All right? Omniscient. John 14:16 through 19. John 14:16 through 19. Let's travel along here. Have you got that, brother? Who's got it? You got it? John 4? Okay. There are a few typographical errors in here. I'm going to catch them every now and then for you. Yes.
Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband and come here." The woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You have well said, I have no husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband, in that you spoke truly."
All right. Now, Jesus knows. He said He knew all men. We have a woman that's been married 4 times here, and she's a very, matter of fact, according to rabbi law, Jesus should have been stoned to death right here because He spoke to this woman. You know that you couldn't even speak to your own wife in public? If you were a Hebrew rabbi, meant you were a doctor of theology, you couldn't speak to your own wife in public. You couldn't do that out in public. And this, of course, the Bible doesn't teach this. This is their laws. These were their laws. All right? And according to them, they could have executed Jesus right now because He was speaking to this woman of very questionable character. Why? I tell you what, He cleansed the hearts of prostitutes and harlots. And this woman here was just a woman messed up in life, many mistakes in her life. Except the problem now is the man that she's living with right now was somebody else's husband. He wasn't hers. This was not her husband. It was somebody else's husband. She had taken this man from somebody else. He was married to someone else. And that's what it's talking about in the Greek language here. This woman's got somebody else's husband. And what a change it made in her life. She went into that little town in Samaria where she lived and told them, and guess what happened? The whole town came out to hear Jesus. Because this woman was a lowlife. And now she's been saved. Changed. Her life was changed. What a personal testimony that makes. You get a notorious criminal and let him be saved. How many of you ever heard Jesse and Frank James and all that? Well, Jesse James was really a deacon, Baptist deacon all the time. He was fighting for justice all the time. He was robbing those banks and things. But Frank James became a preacher after he got out of prison. He was going in churches and preaching all over. Cole Younger. How many of you ever heard of the Younger? By the way, I'm related to all of them, to the white side of my family. But, Fred Buss, his family, the Buss family, the side of my family that married into his family were related to the Cole Youngers and the James. That's where they came from. And and that's the baby that I preached the funeral for a few weeks ago was of this family. He was Fred Buss's great-grandchild, or great-grandnephew, I think it was. But these people, when Cole Younger would go and stand before a city and tell his personal testimony, thousands of people would come to hear him. He was a notorious outlaw. And he'd tell about how the Lord changed his life and saved his soul and all of this. This woman was a Cole Younger of her day. And she went into this city, this notoriously immoral woman, went back to the city, and I have met the Messiah. What did Jesus tell her that day? What did he tell the Samaritan woman that day? He told her about her life, and that's not all he said. What was the final crowning? What was the icing of the cake? That I'm the living water. That I am the Messiah. And she said, when the Messiah comes and will tell us all, he said, the one who's speaking to you right now is the Messiah. He went right straight to the heart of that woman. Right straight. And people, you know what? You'll only find Jesus rejected in Samaria one time. By the way, who were the descendants? Who were these descendants of these Samaritans?
They were the product of Canaanite and Israelite.
Well, they were half-breed Jews. But what was the Jewish part of them?
Benjamin?
Joseph's family. Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh. This was their people. All right, just think about it. And every time in the New Testament you'll see him going through there instead of other places. Because they were accepting the Word of God. All right. All-knowing. Mark 2 and 8 and Luke 5:22 and John 2 and verse 24. Mark 2 and verse 8. Mark. You got that from Ken?
But immediately, when Jesus perceived in his spirit that they reasoned thus within themselves, he said to them, why do you reason about these things in your hearts?
Now, what's the God of heaven doing down here? He's reading the hearts of mankind. And you can turn on television every morning now and you can get a necromancer.
Mm-hmm.
What we call a medium or a witch, according to the Word of God. It's witchcraft. People don't communicate with the dead, by the way. That's impossible. You don't communicate with the dead, but you can definitely communicate with demon spirits that knew the dead. And anytime anybody is quoting what a dead person feels or something, that's direct demonic activity, people. It's not from God. And almost every one of them will name the name of God. But it is not. It's not God's will. God can read the hearts of men, and God can tell you what's going on. When Jesus was here, He gave us a story in Luke the 16th chapter of a rich man and a poor man that had gone to hell and gave the actual testimony of these people in those places because he was God. That's the only time you're ever going to see any of that for real. Luke 5:22. Luke 5 and verse 22, Brother John.
But Jesus, aware of their reasonings, answered and said to them, Why are you reasoning in your hearts?
All right. And then John 2:24 and verse 25. Reading the hearts of mankind. Brother Bill.
But Jesus did not commit himself to them because he knew all men and had no need that anyone should testify them, for he knew what was in man.
All right. He knew what was in the hearts of mankind. The Lord knew these things. Mark 11, 1 through 7. Mark 11, 1 through 7. This is prophecy here of what's going to happen. Mark 11, 1 through 7. Who's got Mark? Connor Marcone. The Gospel of Mark. Christy.
Mark 11,
Yes.
1 through 7.
Yeah.
When they approached Jerusalem at Bethphage and Bethany near the Mount of Olives, he sent two of the disciples and said to them, Go into the village opposite you, and immediately as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there, on which no one yet has ever sat. Untie it and bring it here. And if anyone says to you, Why are you doing this? You say, The Lord has need of it, and immediately he will send it back here. And they went away and found the colt tied to the door outside in the street, and they untied it. And some of the bystanders were saying to them, What are you doing, untying the colt? And they spoke to them just as Jesus had told them, and they gave them permission. And they brought the colt to Jesus and put their garments on it, and he sat on it.
I remember an old preacher one time telling me that he wanted to talk to a man out in the woods. He was a no good and a drunkard and beat his wife and everything, but he did know the Bible a little bit. And he talked to this man. He says, You really need to mend your ways and bring your children to church and everything else. He said, I wouldn't have anything to do with a donkey thief. I know that story where Jesus stole their donkey. I'm going to tell you something. You look out, everything that you see in this world is Jesus's. We only get to borrow it just a little bit. What this man told, what Jesus told these people to do when these people came up says that the Lord, the Creator, has need of him. Besides that, they got him back anyway. He broke that donkey, didn't he? Donkeys are really hard to break. Stubborn, stubborn as a mule. Well, these are mules, half horse. But this is a donkey. They're real stubborn. He broke this donkey for them. A donkey that nobody had ever ridden before. This is what you call foreknowledge, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And he also told them what to say to the people that would come up. When he was looking for a place to have the Passover, he did the same thing, didn't he? The other time, when you see this guy having a picture and all this kind of stuff, go to him and say, we're going to borrow your house. And it's going to be all right. This is foreknowledge, isn't it? All right? This is what you call omniscience. Okay, omnipresent. Matthew 18 and 20. Now, Jesus is foretelling something here. In Matthew 28 and verse 20. Matthew 18 and verse 20. Any of you guys back there got that looked up? Brother Bill.
Matthew 18 and 20. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, I am there in the midst of them.
All right, now, the Lord is talking to his little ecclesia. The word ecclesia means ones called out, and that was his little church that he called out during his ministry. Now, he hadn't given it all the marching orders and everything that he would on the day of Pentecost yet, but the church was there. This little ecclesia he was guiding it, and then he told them something here in Matthew, the 18th chapter. Now, Jesus also said later on, he said, unless I go away, he had to be crucified, he had to be resurrected, and then he had to go back to heaven to send the Comforter so that he could be with every church everywhere in the world. And it's here this day. That Holy Spirit, and of course that is Christ too, isn't it? This is, we have a triune God. When one does something, all of them do it. When Jesus Christ died on the cross of Calvary, when He paid the penalty, the Father and the Holy Spirit did it too, because they were all in unison. All right? And Jesus says, where there are 2 or 3 gathered together in my authority, in my name, I will be with you. This is prophecy again, isn't it? And He's speaking to His church. Who's speaking? Who's He speaking to? What's the subject? All right? It's today. The promise is here. The Shekinah glory of God that came upon the tabernacle in the Old Testament and the temple in the Old Testament and that came upon the church there in Jerusalem is with us still today. That's the promise. All right. In Matthew 16 and 18, I'm going to throw you in just a little bit after here. The Lord was talking to Peter and talking to the rest of His little church. And this is, by the way, where the Catholic Church says that the church is founded upon Peter. Okay? I'll give you this, and I'm going to turn it over to Brother Greg in just a minute. Peter just made an absolute beautiful statement where he said that the miracles, he said, he asked his disciples, he says, what do the people say who I am? And they said, oh, some of them John the Baptist, some Elijah. He said, but who do you say I am? And Peter jumped up and says, you're the Messiah. You are the Holy One of God. You're Jehovah in the flesh. Aha. He said, your rabbis over there in Galilee didn't teach you that. You didn't get that from Mom and you didn't get that from Daddy, but you got that from the Father above. Revealed that to you. Then he said unto him, also he started rebuking the Lord for going to go to the cross. He said, get thee behind me, Satan. He said that to Peter also, because it was Satan in him, opposing him to do the thing he did. And then also he was looking at Peter, and he said, you're Peter, a little stone that can be kicked around, Petros, a little stone that can be, a pebble that can be picked up and thrown. But he said, upon this great foundation stone, big, gigantic foundation stone like the rock of Gibraltar or Laurel Rock over there, or something big, foundation stone, like the cement stone underneath this great big He said, but upon this foundation stone I shall be building my ecclesia, my church, my assembly, and the gates of hell will not wrestle her down. Will not be able to wrestle her down. It doesn't say the gates of hell wouldn't try, but it will not wrestle her down. Now Matthew 28:18 through 20. Who's got that? Matthew 28:18 through 20. Anybody got that? Brother Gray.
Teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Amen.
All right. Now he's telling his church again here. He said, as you're gone out into the world, I know King James says as you're going, but it says not, that doesn't really translate it that way. It says, after you've gone out into the world, make disciples, that's the command. And then it says, baptizing them and teaching them to observe all things, guard with their life all things that I have given to you. And lo, pay attention, big exclamation mark here. Pay attention, people. He said, I'll be with you always, even unto the end of the age. Who's he speaking to? The church. He's with us today, isn't he? And how is he with us? Because he is omnipresent. Through his Spirit, he's here this morning with me. When we go out and worship, he's here in this Sunday school class. The glory of God is with us as we study his Word. And we're going to quit there for this morning. And is this the 26? All right. Thank you for your attention. And God bless you with his Word. I pray that you've learned something, and it's been a blessing for me to teach you. Brother Greg.